Well, good afternoon, Realtors. My name is John Giardinelli, and we're here to do another rant. This is our third in a series. I'll go over the other two in just a second. But on that subject, I did want to update you on something we talked about last month. Last month, we did a presentation of offers program, and I indicated to you in April that the National Association of Realtors Board of Directors was going to consider a California proposal to change the Code of Ethics. And the good news is they're going to do that. So commencing on January 1st of 2019, Article 1 and Standards of Practice 1.7 will be changed. Let me read you what the new change will be that was passed. NAR is going to change the Code of Ethics to require realtors, when acting as listing agents, to provide verification upon request from a cooperating agent that an offer submitted by the cooperating agent has been presented to the seller, or that the seller has waived the obligation to have the offer presented, and that, of course, also has to be done in writing. I suspect, and I'm almost assured, that the multiple listing service will also change its rules, commencing probably about the same time frame, so that this rule will apply not just to realtors, but to anyone who puts a listing in the multiple listing service. I suspect that this will help, if not solve, the problem of agents refusing to present offers to their clients, which, as we mentioned last month, is a breach of their fiduciary duty. So I think this is the step in the right direction. I hope that it will be well received. We will be writing more about the do's and don'ts, and we'll probably actually revisit the issue of presentation of offers sometime later in the year before this goes into effect. It should actually solve part of a problem, which is that the seller is not required to come to our ethics hearings. Now, at least, the seller's written confirmation that they received the offer will be part of the package. This month we're going to talk about something that surprises me, frankly, a little bit, but has become quite an issue both here and at the California Association of Realtors. We were advised by your professional standards group that there's been a substantial uptick in the number of complaints filed against realtors who interfere with the exclusive agency of another realtor. That issue has been mirrored at CAR, which has indicated that one of its most common problems is agency interference. Now remember, in California, there usually is only one type of exclusive agreement, and that is the listing agreement. In many states, but not so much in California, buyer's agreements are also in writing and are exclusive. While we have an exclusive buyer-broker representation agreement that would apply to this discussion, most of the time agents shy away from asking their clients to sign those agreements, so most exclusive agency agreements are on the listing side. So I'll give you a scenario, and I'm going to read this because this is a case that we actually saw recently. You begin casually talking to a person at the grocery store who mentions that he is in the process of selling his house. You ask the person if he is currently working with an agent, and the reply is yes. He signed an exclusive agreement with another brokerage. After asking what that agent's commission is, you inform him that you can offer him a rebate of a specific amount and guarantee to sell his house in a much shorter period of time if he decides to work with you. That is a violation of the Code of Ethics and will get that particular agent in substantial difficulty. We see this coming up in a number of different ways, and I'm going to again go over some of the ways we've seen it here at Pacific West. You circumvent the broker and you present the offer directly to the seller. While there are very limited circumstances that we talked about last month, that is not something that should be done on a regular basis. You offer a rebate or a financial incentive to another broker's client to induce them into using your office instead and breaching their exclusive agreement. You wait for parties at open houses. You try to work with your loan officer to get people to switch agents. There are many, many ways this is coming up. A couple of things before we get into the Code of Ethics. Remember, if there is no exclusive buyer-broker representation agreement, there probably is no law regarding dealing with buyer's agents. But I would urge you to consider an issue that comes up all the time. Probably the most common arbitration complaint is for breach of the procuring cause issue. What happens is a listing is placed in the MLS. Someone is working with a buyer. The buyer's agent has presented a great deal of information, maybe even written up an offer that was unsuccessful, and now that buyer is lured by a financial incentive or some other inappropriate reason and goes to another buyer's agent, excuse me. While that may not be an ethical violation per se, you ought to be very aware that if you are the person who is luring that buyer away from the buyer's agent, you may end up on the short end of a commission dispute because you may not be the procuring cause of that buyer. That's a subject that we'll take up later on in one of these rants, but for right now, be aware that at the minimum, what you need to do is you need to ask that buyer when they come into your office, come to your open house, however they contact you, are you working with another broker or agent? And if the answer is yes, then you need to decide on a case-by-case basis, are you going to call that broker, make sure that you don't have any issues with procuring cause concerns? How are you going to protect yourself and your new client in the event there is a commission dispute? Well, having said that, let me tell you about the Code of Ethics and about a specific standard of practice. Again, there is a specific standard of practice and a Code of Ethics and Standards of Practice dealing with this issue, and it is Article 16 of the Code of Ethics. And here's what it says. Realtors shall not engage in any practice or take any action that is inconsistent with the exclusive representation or exclusive brokerage relationship agreements that other realtors have with clients. Now, as to that exclusive representation and agreement, most people assume that that means a written agreement, but there are some people out there, including some of the hearing officers, who believe that isn't necessarily the case. So, what does that mean? Well, again, Article 16 really covers two basic situations. First, you make a telephone or personal solicitation of a property owner who has been identified in a real estate sign or a multiple listing service compilation or other information service that has been shown to have an exclusive agreement with another realtor. Or two, you mail or do some other form of solicitation to prospective sellers, and those sellers are exclusively signed on with a realtor. Again, you can do general mailings, and in fact, what I've seen that seems to work well is you send out a general mailing to a whole bunch of prospective sellers indicating your services are available, but on the bottom you make it clear that if the person is already signed on with another realtor in an exclusive relationship, that person is off limits and you cannot have any contact with them. Remember, the Code of Ethics talks about any action, any practice. It is a very broad document. So let's talk about some specifics. As you know, the articles are the violation that you could be charged with ethically, as well as in other manners, and the standards of practice sort of explain that. So let me go over a couple of the standards of practice. You may not solicit anyone for a present agreement that has an exclusive agreement of any kind, primarily in California, a listing agreement with any buyer. That is in Standards of Practice 16.4 and 16.5. When you do contact another realtor, according to 16.6, you may not directly or even indirectly initiate any conversation about anything other than a future agreement that might be entered into once the current agreement has expired and is no longer in effect. 16.9 indicates that you have an affirmative obligation to make sure that before you take a listing from another seller, that you confirm that there are no current valid exclusive agreements. 16.16 is a little complicated, but the thrust of it is this. It is considered a violation of Article 16 to make an offer of compensation in your purchase agreement. In other words, you make it part of the negotiation. That is considered a violation. What you have to do is you have to contact the listing broker, ask them if they would be open to additional compensation, execute a cooperating broker compensation agreement for the amount that would be agreed to. What you cannot do is you cannot make an offer from your buyer contingent upon an increased compensation that is to be paid to you. Likewise, a listing broker cannot change compensation in any manner once he or she has been made aware that there is an executed offer that will be presented. Once you do that, then commission is frozen at that amount. So there's a lot more. There are at least 20 standards of practice, and it's important that you understand that while it generally in California only applies to exclusive listing agreements, it could apply if there is an exclusive buyer representation agreement. But if there is no exclusive buyer representation agreement, you still run the risk of a procuring cause claim for a commission, which could mean you could be doing a lot of work for little, if any, money. There are also some rules in the MLS that you should be aware of. Rule 9.7 of CRMLS's rules indicate that a broker cannot change compensation or use the terms of an offer to attempt to modify the listing broker's compensation. You must do that through a cooperating broker compensation agreement. That rule then tracks the rule that is applicable in the standards of practice. So this way, a broker who is not necessarily a realtor and therefore does not necessarily violate the code of ethics will be in violation of the MLS rules. Article 12.4 and 12.8 talk about advertising other people's listings, and there's some very complicated rules, the thrust of which is that you have to have a listing broker's permission. That permission may be inferred, but nevertheless must exist. And you cannot use MLS information for purposes other than that which was set up by the MLS. I will tell you that there is some conversation going on right now that might change Rule 12.11. So, what are the best practices? Number one, err on the side of caution. First, ask a client, are you under a representation agreement with another agent or realtor? Do not engage a client who confirms that he or she is being represented, or if another agent notifies you that the client is currently under some type of a written exclusive agreement. Make sure you receive a cooperating broker's permission before using signs, advertisements or listings, or attending open houses for the purpose of attempting to obtain clients. Be honest. Be honest with everybody. Be honest with agents. Be honest with clients. Maintain your integrity. One of the problems with organized real estate that could cause some real damage down the line is if the general public believes that agents as a whole are not men and women of integrity. And lastly, but just as importantly, read the Code of Ethics. Periodically update yourself on what they say. Read CAR information. For example, there is a really fine article on ethical issues dealing with prospective buyers that might be important to you, and read the multiple listing service rules, because those things do change periodically. Next month, we're probably going to talk about some new forms that are coming out. I'm very excited about two new forms. One has to do with homeowners associations, and one has to do with how to prepare your clients to fill out disclosure forms. I am very excited about the new statewide advisory, and we'll cover some of that next month. If there's a topic that you are interested in me ranting about, please let me know. Let Lori Smith know, let Janine McKinney know, or let myself know, and we'll do the very best we can to put together some information for you in one of these rants or in our newsletter. Again, we are invited to go back and look at last month's program. We did a program that we just updated on presenting your offers, and before that, we did one on coming soon signs. I want to thank you for allowing us to be of service.